When I was just 2, I kept falling sick and was really pale most of the time. After a high fever, I was immediately rushed to the hospital and I got a blood test done, and that was the day I was tested positive with beta thalassemia major. And I remember each time I ended up crying and screaming in pain and agony because they would poke my tiny arms with needles and also my feet at times. And that was not all. I remember the butterfly needle. And that needle had to be inserted into my stomach for 12 hours straight every day. I had the opportunity to undergo a matched unrelated bone marrow transplant in 2006. I had to spend 7 whole months in Kuala Lumpur because I'm from Kuching. And I had to skip a whole year of school, and back then I was only primary 2. Eventually, I started on oral chemotherapy drugs. And then one day, I woke up, I scratched my head, and then I saw hair on the palm of my hands. That was when I was like, wow, this is really happening. Just weeks after the successful transplantation of my new bone marrow, the doctor came into my room one day and he told me I was struck with yet another serious complication called the graft versus host disease, or otherwise known as GVHD. And it's basically an autoimmune disease. The bald patch on my head is because of that, and the discoloration on my face is also because of that. After the transplant, I was on a high dose of steroids. So then I grew really fat. When I returned to school the next year, which was in 2007, no one could recognize me. So I was just sitting there on my table all alone. I was scared to reach out to the rest of my classmates because I felt that I was very different from them. And I was really scared of being perceived as ugly because deep down, I agreed with them. In the middle of that year, I was bullied. I was called hurtful names and was probably even deemed as fat or ugly to a certain extent. It did affect me quite badly. I think things got so bad to the point where sometimes I just come back from school, isolating myself in my room and the toilet, crying all by myself. And I would be like wondering, was I really that unsightly, that monstrous? After the transplant, I thought that it was finally all over. But once again, I was wrong. I was diagnosed with bilateral cataracts in both of my eyes. In 2010, I was diagnosed with hormonal insufficiency, and back then I had a little bit of stunted growth. And a few months later, I was diagnosed with atopic eczema, and I remember my hands being so red, so dry, and so cracked, and the pain was so excruciating. After that, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and this is my 8th year living as a diabetic patient. But as I grew older, as I matured, I slowly learned to accept myself, my imperfections, my flaws. And I realized that they were really beautiful because they were scars of the battle which I'd fought, and they were part of my journey. On the 29th of September 2017, I made another courageous decision in life to take a step further. I wrote a book, and it's called The Journey to Becoming Fearless, a story of hope, courage, and strength. I want to be a voice that speaks on behalf of those in the same shoes as me, especially those fighting an illness, facing hardships, or even those repressed by insecurities or extreme vulnerability. I chose to keep fighting because I didn't want to let my loved ones down, and I didn't want to let myself down. I learned to love and embrace every single part of me. And by every single part, I mean the good and even the bad, my illnesses, my flaws, basically just everything about me. And I learned to see the good and beauty in everything.